I've certainly I've heard criticism, as we all have, of Jimmy Carter during his presidential time. I'd never hear much criticism about Rosalynn Carter in terms of her political instincts, her manner, her what the impact that she had.
Well, it's interesting. Today we're looking back and talking about her as um, a pioneer or someone who at least pushed the boundaries. At the time, I think women and feminists were not altogether positive about her. I mean, she did get some criticism from what we might call the right, but she also got it from feminists on the left who felt she was too deferential, too much played the old fashioned role the way, Pat Nixon more recently was known to have done. And we should probably give a shout out in between to Betty Ford, who in some ways was more important than Rosalind Carter. She really, both with her drinking and with her breast cancer, went public with these, really became a very public figure in her own right. And after that, I think and this was, of course, the mid 70s, kind of the heyday of feminism, or women's lib, as the term at the time was used. And so there were sort of expectations that, okay, here's a Democrat in office, no left, albeit a very conservative Democrat, but shouldn't the First Lady step up? So a lot of feminists were disappointed that she was not more outspoken, that she was a Southern traditionalist in many ways. She had a very reserved personality, so she couldn't be, sort of galvanizing to the public. She didn't have those gifts the way some politicians do. So there were criticisms, of course, from that perspective as well.
Her particular causes were mental health. I know she spoke a lot about the importance of care for caregivers. How important were those as issues? Or certainly she continued to talk about it long after her husband left office.
Yeah, I mean, she certainly, I think, gets credit for um, helping to put those issues on the national agenda, or at least you might say, sort of shining a light on those issues. Obviously, there were people before her who were talking about them. And, it's always a challenge, I think, that first ladies face when they pick an issue. And unfortunately, it's often been kind of, you get one that you're associated with. And it usually has to be an issue that is in some ways feminized, or, seems okay for
Right.
women.
As a
It,
mother, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
exactly right. It's rare for first ladies to say, like, I'm going to look at like the readiness of our navy or something like that. It's usually, I mean, they should, or they could, but usually it's something. Michelle Obama did obesity and fitness, and it often has to do with these kind of
Melania
caring.
Trump, yeah.
Right,
Cyberbullying, I think,
exactly.
was Melania Trump, yeah.
Right, yeah. Didn't go too far with that one, at least from her own family standpoint. But yes, so I think she played a role in spotlighting that issue, and as you say, in some ways, more importantly, afterwards, kept up with it, which suggested this was not a political stunt or a political fashion. This was a lifelong commitment. There were foundation. She said foundations for, or a foundation for, promoting awareness of mental health issues, for um, promoting solutions to difficulties. People late in life needing care. So it was part of a lifelong commitment, and in some ways, that is, I think, even more honorable than using those brief years in the White House to shine a light on it.
Let me circle back to her personality, and frankly, her husband too. One of the things that has struck me in looking at many videos of her and just over the years hearing her speak was a certain fundamental kindness and a decency to the way she interacted, the way she thought about politics. I almost feel wistful in saying that, but was that unusual?
Well, look, I think the nation in the late 1970s is still coming out of Watergate and the Nixon years, and also Vietnam. And these were very contentious years, to put it mildly. I mean, look, much like our own, people who wouldn't talk to each other. We had the generation gap where young people felt one way about America, and older people felt another way. And then Nixon in the White House was, a very angry man. And he himself was a divisive personality. I mean, Ford was not. But I think the nation was kind of, it's hard to generalize about what was then maybe 200 million people, but there was a sense of being depleted, of being exhausted, of these partisanship, having gone too far, other divisions being too debilitating on the culture. So there was something about both Jimmy and Rosalynn coming in and trying to set a new tone. Um, it wasn't perfectly successful. I mean, Jimmy Carter was an interesting personality. On the one hand, could be very, warm isn't the right word, but could be very positive minded about the United States and its people, and he stressed decency. He was also himself could be very prickly and impatient and short tempered. So it doesn't mean there's a perfect overlap there. And I think Rosalynn too. The warmth, the positiveness, very much came through in her public persona. I think for some people, maybe the younger generation, there was less of a connection there. That she seemed more of a throwback to an earlier model of motherhood, wifehood, and she didn't become a symbol for women the way in our own time Hillary Clinton or even Michelle Obama has become really a symbol for a lot of people whose picture gets put up on walls or that kind of a thing.